Algorithms don't have wallets. AI can't become loyal customers. Machines don't have friends to refer. And yet most businesses are building their entire marketing around serving them. Gaming search engines, feeding platforms content for the sake of content, prompting AI to write social media posts designed to perform well inside algorithm systems, which, if you think about it, is just machines talking to machines, hoping a human eventually shows up. And the result is marketing that generates clicks but no connection. And without connection, there's no reason for anybody to stay, care, buy again, or even tell their friends about it. You end up constantly hunting for the next person to extract from. And that is what I call the algorithm trap. And this show is about getting out of it. So, welcome to Antiviral, an educational podcast that will center around how to add a human touch to marketing. My name is June, and I have been in marketing for more than 10 years now. I'm a marketing strategist, and I consistently do a lot of presentations around marketing and coaching, as well as doing strategy for companies. And I decided to do this podcast particularly because I have a slightly different view on how to tackle marketing in general that I think is really, really valuable and really important. But I also am doing this because I think a lot of people could benefit from understanding marketing. Because primarily, I think a lot of people, whenever they think of marketing, they think of social media, they think of a website, they think of advertising and stuff like that, especially for digital marketing. But the reality of all those is that they're all just simple tools. How you use them is actually the important part. Those aren't like having social media doesn't really mean anything or do anything. That is not the marketing part. The marketing part is how you think about doing it, the content that you put out, et cetera, et cetera. So I think being able to understand marketing and give people the knowledge and the proper context, if you will, for how marketing should work, I think is going to be very valuable for a business of any size, whether you are just starting up or whether you are actually have employees, have a larger company structure. So I mentioned one of the things that I do a little bit differently than most people, and that is my views and my style of marketing. And I like to call my style of marketing human marketing. And what that means is essentially just treating people like people is how I like to express it, because a lot of people see, especially when it comes to reporting, which we'll talk about it in a little bit, but a lot of people see numbers and they immediately want to make those numbers go up. That's the standard way of viewing things, right? But nobody stops to think about that these numbers are all actual people on the other side. And treating them well, I think, is partly what makes good marketing. Because, again, one of the big misconceptions around marketing is the idea that you have to be selling in marketing all the time. You see it everywhere now, where no matter where you are, people are trying to sell something to you, right? But I consider marketing to be a relationship building engine. And I usually talk about how in corporate marketing, there is a marketing department and there is a sales department. And that's because those two don't do the same job, right? Sales is about selling something and marketing is about what comes before the sales, sort of like a pre-selling situation. And what is the pre-sell, if you will? That's building a relationship, right? The goal for marketing is to be worth paying attention to in a way. So this podcast will talk about the different topics around marketing and around marketing from this human marketing sort of angle. And we'll talk about major topics like SEO, advertising, that sort of thing. We'll try to do it as I was thinking about it, and I'm still thinking about it because I'm not entirely sure, but doing it kind of like a season sort of scenario where we talk for SEO for an entire season. And then we move on to the next topic, as opposed to talking about, SEO or advertising in one episode and then moving on to the next thing. I think that might be a little bit more usable. But if you have any thoughts about it, feel free to let me know. And who knows, I may change my mind. And this is all kind of meant to help you. This podcast in particular is kind of meant to help everybody create better marketing and grow your business the same way that you did when you first started out. Because I think that is a common theme that I see all the time, is the fact that whenever we start our business, what happens is we usually get people that are friends or family members, and they come help us and they refer to us. And then we build a network, right, of people that are willing to help us or willing to kickstart our business. And then we get referred to people that we don't know. And that, again, starts to create this relationship building where we start bringing in, and then referrals start to happen. And everybody that is a successful business usually tends to have referral as the core part of how they grew their business at the start. So having this scenario in place, you start to realize that as soon as you start growing and getting bigger and all these kinds of things, you start realizing that you don't have the time to continually build relationships, right? Or there are more time intensive things that require your attention. So you end up hiring your marketing out, and that is going to agencies, and that is going to other places, or to these tools that we talked about, like advertising. And then, because these agencies and because these things want to give you some sort of results that keep you coming back to them, right? They use metrics, they use those reports, they use those numbers, and they tell you these numbers are good or these numbers are bad. And there's nothing wrong with them. Reports are actually quite useful to understand the landscape on how things work. But they're also very limiting in terms of information, meaning that, the number of people that visited your website is good, right? That tells you how many people visited your website, but it's also, did they leave? Did they move? Did they change? Did they not like what they saw? There are a lot of little bits of information that also gets basically washed out because we're only looking at one number, right? So it is. I always tell people that with reports, numbers are very limiting, which allows you to view things at a glance, which is great, but it's also very limiting, period. And I don't usually try to rely solely on reports. I usually like to take a grain of salt with everything that I am looking at, because what I want to know is, am I building a relationship? Am I doing the pre-selling properly? And those things tend to be hard to put into a number, hard to quantify, if you will. Think about trust as an example. I want people to trust me before they get to a certain level of relationship, or before I can sell to them, as an example, that being my goal, right? Well, then how do I quantify trust? And that is, I think, where my concept of relationship building comes into play, where I have like this um, set of stages that everybody has to go through in order to build a proper relationship that ends up in a sale. And the way that I like to say it is, it starts with not knowing. Somebody doesn't know you, right? Not knowing, and then it goes into knowing, then it goes into liking, then it goes into trusting, and then it goes into, here's my money. So the way that people interact with your marketing is never completely rational, meaning they don't follow 1, 2, 3, 4, right? They go all over the place. Similar with your website. If you've ever looked at reports on your website, you see people going from your homepage directly to your contact us, and then they move into the about, or they do look at the products, and then they, look at something else that is completely random. And eventually they all kind of fall back into something. They either leave or they don't, right? And I think it flows the same way when it comes to building a relationship. And everybody has a unique way of building a relationship, with people. So what you want to do essentially in your marketing is trying to figure out where are my audience, right? The audience that I'm trying to attract right now in these specific channels, in these specific tools like social media, advertising, et cetera, et cetera. And what stage of relationship are they in? And what am I building for that specific stage, right? Because if they don't know anything about me, they've never heard of me, and the first thing that they see is, my product at 29.99 as an example. Well, then what does that say about my relationship with them? They don't care. They probably won't pay attention unless it's something that they've already want, right? And are actively trying to buy something. But if they were, I don't know if they would necessarily be on social media. They would be, searching on Google. They would be on Amazon. They would be somewhere, where things make a little bit more sense. So it's about having that context. And a lot of marketing, I believe, and that's what I usually try to coach people into thinking and understanding, is that marketing requires a lot more context. And once you have this context in place, it makes making decisions around your marketing significantly easier, because now you're able to think about, okay, so I'm in social media as an example. I'm going to create a post, and I'm going to create a post for people that don't know anything about me. Well, then maybe the way that I go about it is going to be different. That when they say, okay, I'm just going to do exactly for my audience, the audience they already have, they already know a lot of stuff about me. They probably already like me. So now I'm going to get them to either trust me, or I'm going to sell my product now because it makes sense. And that carries a way different way of, building that post. Whereas if you're talking to somebody that doesn't know anything about you, then you would do completely different things, right? And I think that's where a lot of things start to fall apart, right? For people, is that as soon as they get busy, and as soon as they start farming out, giving it to agencies or giving it to these tools to actually automatically manage things for you, you see those numbers go up. And because you don't have the right context in place for how to understand the marketing and how to build relationships, if you will, then it really starts centering around, well, then how do I make the algorithm, which is the only bottleneck, the only limiting factor, right, for my marketing in quotation marks? How do I game that algorithm so that I end up on top? And that's when you start seeing people follow trends. You start seeing people try to manipulate the algorithm somehow. And you see this very clearly. You used to see it very clearly with SEO, where, you knew that Google, and everybody pretty much knows that Google uses keywords to figure out what you do in your website, right? So they would stuff as many keywords as possible inside a couple paragraphs just to get those keywords in and attention, right? And that's called keyword stuffing. And that's actually not something that Google likes. Google will actually penalize you for that. But we're not going to get into SEO right now. It's just an example for you to kind of see the fact that a lot of people end up developing this mentality around building for algorithms instead of building for people and building for their potential client. Because that's the first thing that you see. You see those numbers, and those numbers are for the algorithm. Those numbers are not for people. And it's very easy to get stuck in this trap of trying to go viral, of trying to get as many likes as possible, or get as many whatever, just to gather attention. Your whole entire premise then becomes about getting attention as cheaply as possible. And that is a very dangerous way of viewing people. Because if that's all you want, which is to become famous, if you will, it really limits a lot of things that you are going to do or willing to do. You end up trying to create a lot of leads, a lot of very cheap clicks, a lot of very cheap. And then when you're trying to figure out how to stand out, or how to be different, or how to, you know, um, get more clients, it becomes significantly harder because you're focusing on the wrong thing, right? And how we came here is actually a very interesting story. I think when we first started out in marketing early on, back when there was no internet, there was no anything, there was just newspaper, maybe, and a radio station, maybe. Marketing used to be a lot simpler, right? Because these channels are very limiting, right? And all you needed to do in a town for you to stand out was essentially get um, a slightly better product, or be a slightly better person, or be slightly more personable, be slightly more professional, if you will. Just do slightly better things. And then you would be able to stand out because their competition was basically Bob down the street. And that was the only person, and that was it, as an example, right? And then with marketing, all you needed to do was attention, because most of the work came in person because there was nothing else. There was nothing different. Most of the work in your marketing was simply, if people come through the door, then I can do something about it. And people still have that thought into this day, that if they came through the door, then I will be able to sell them something. But when I go and do something online, I can't do that. And why is it so hard? Well, it's because in person, you are you, and you're able to deliver yourself and your expertise and who you are and what makes you special, right? In front of that audience in particular. But online, you're not doing that. Online, you're just selling. And when, again, people ask to stand out, well, you're not doing the things that usually stand out, right? Which is being yourself. So as marketing and the history of marketing here, if as marketing started growing and getting more and more channels, then this idea of getting attention to bring people in through the door, became or stayed as much as possible into and crept into the online world when the internet come out, and when, things were, advertising started coming into play, and all these kinds of tools that we have now, all of them relied around this concept of, I just need to get them through the door. But now with social media and how things have evolved, now you have another space where you can actually exist and be, and you don't have to be in the same room as other people. And that's a very different way of looking at marketing, because now you're trying to sell something, or you're trying to do something without being in the same room, which means that who you are and what makes you special and what makes you unique is something that you need to showcase in this platform and in this space, not just in person, because the people that are going to come to you no longer just come to you in person, to your office or to your store or to whatever it is. Now, people are getting to know you, and people are trying to get to know you online. And that carries a very different way of viewing things that I think a lot of people just don't think about, where now, instead of you trying to attract someone into your store or in person so that you can talk to them and give them that expertise, and like ask them how their day is doing, and ask them, and trying to find a way to connect. Oh, I like fishing as well, that sort of thing. Now, instead, right, you need to think about doing this yourself first, because the other person is not in the same room as you. They're on the other side of the screen, on social media, online, etc. Now, it's your job to put yourself up first, to try and develop a relationship with these people before they actually contact you. Because by the time that they have contacted you, the whole point is to have done that pre-selling in place, to have done that idea of that I have gotten to know someone, and I think I like this person better than other people. Because now you're competing not just against, Bob down the street. Now you're competing against the entire world that can do all these different things, or have solutions, varying amounts of solutions for the same problem that you're trying to solve for this person. Because there's usually more than one way to solve problems. And now our job is to showcase who we are in front of people, so that they develop a relationship. They get that inkling. Whenever you meet someone, even if you're doing a presentation, or even if you don't actually get to talk to them, you usually get a feeling of who they are, right? Or even if you're talking through Zoom as an example, you usually get a feeling for who they are because you see their body language and you see how they interact or you see how they explain things. And you get that sense of feeling is like, oh, I really get this person, or I really like this person, or I really don't like this person. I don't want to deal with them, right? That feeling is exactly what people are trying to assess online. They're constantly trying to figure out whenever they read something that you wrote, a social media post or an email or your website or whatever, everything is trying to point at who they're trying to figure out subconsciously, right? Is who are you? Is this right for me? Is this the right person? Is this someone that I can trust? Is this someone that I can talk to, that is not going to let me down, that is not going to take my money and run away? All sorts of scenarios, right? And this is the same reason why whenever you are looking for a product, as an example, right? And I do this as well all the time. But whenever you're looking at a product, I go to Amazon, for example, and then I immediately click on the reviews. Why? Instead of reading the description of what the company, right, or whoever's trying to sell me, unless what they tell me. Well, the reason is primarily because I don't trust the people that are writing these descriptions anymore. Instead, I trust real people. I trust the ones that have actually gotten the product and have actually something to say, good, bad, or ugly. I want to know that because it feels real. It feels like it's actually valuable for me because right now the world and the internet itself is inundated with noise. It's inundated with this sense of professionalism, this sense of, you know, every company wants to feel like they are a multi-conglomerate company with 200 plus employees, and everybody wants to be professional and, wear a suit and a tie and appear successful and all these kinds of things. What people really want is they want reality. They want something that they can feel that is actually true. Now with AI creating videos and creating pictures and all these kinds of things, you can't even trust what you see on the internet anymore, right? What people want is that sense of trust, that I can trust that this company is going to take care of me, or that I trust that what I'm seeing is real, or I trust that when I give my money to someone, they're actually going to do it for good, et cetera, et cetera. Like what people want is not professionalism, is not, you know, your product features anymore because nobody cares. There are a million different ways of solving a problem. And if I wanted the most effective problem solution, right, I would go to the most effective solution. If I want the best solution for me, which is a large portion of the population as well, right? Everybody has different reasons why they buy things. But if I want the right solution for me, then I'm looking for, someone's hand that I can shake because at least I know where to find them. At least if I have a problem, I know who to contact. Or I'm looking for someone that has a lot of reviews because I trust that if a lot of people have gone through the product, then most likely this is a good product. All these kind of different iterations on the same concept of being real. And that I think is the main concept that I want people to understand around marketing and around getting out of this algorithm trap that we have put ourselves into in the modern marketing world. And it's just be real, be you at the end of the day, right? That is the best way to combat the noise and the negativity and everything that we see on the internet. And the best way to stand out on the internet is by being yourself because you're a unique human being. And that uniqueness, the way your experience, the way that you were raised, the way that you view the world, the way that you describe the world, and all these kinds of things amount to only you could say or do or interact with the world the way that you do. And everybody has a unique and different way of doing things. And that's what makes you special. And that's what makes people say, hey, I like this person, or I think I'm going to keep going. And it's okay if people keep going. There's nothing wrong because those people are not for you. And what you want is to find people that are for you. So be yourself online is the best antidote for everything. And that is a question I saw Reggie James. It is a quote that I saw him talk about, which is the one of the big questions of this decade is how do you become post-algorithmic while remaining economically viable? That's, I think, a lot of people's worry when it comes to marketing right now is they see the writing on the wall. They see that this is not right. They see that there's too much noise. There's too much advertisement. There is too much of everything. And they know that they just have to either pare down or be different or be, you know, more themselves, however it is that they think about it. But they're scared. They're wondering is if I do this, will I still have a business tomorrow? Will this work? And I think the big answer there, like I said, by being yourself is the only answer that is worth giving to that question. But there are no guarantees, right? I can't tell you that just by being yourself, it's going to make all the difference, it's going to change everything, but it's going to make your marketing a lot simpler. Why? Because now you're not looking to be someone that you're not. You're not forcing yourself to be something that you are not. You just need to be you. And that means that if you like fishing or if you like painting, how can I use that in my marketing? If I like riding horses, how do I use that in my marketing? How do I become more unique and more special and different? One of the tips that I have when it comes to being more yourself in marketing is to actually spend time thinking about how you build relationships in person, because it's a very common thing that a lot of people, when they come to me, they usually tell me, oh, like if I can get someone in person, then I can sell them something. Like that's no question about it, right? But they never actually stop to think about how do I do this? So that's one of the things that I usually tend to tell people is like spend some time actually thinking about going through the past conversations that you had, the most recent conversations that you've had with someone that eventually ended up in a sale or that, eventually and like I really like this person. This was a great conversation. And actually start thinking about it's like, okay, so what are the things that I typically do in that in-person conversation? Do I like try to connect with them in some way? Do I like to make a joke in some way? Do I like to, all these little tiny different things? Because those are technically all the tiny different things that you can potentially do for your marketing when you're on social media, when you're putting it on your website, when you're trying to get people to know you. Doing the same thing that works in person is not a bad thing. You just have to think about it differently. That's all. That is all what I think digital marketing needs to be. It's a different way of thinking about doing the exact same things that work in person for you. And to start using this idea of building relationships, start using this sense of trust or building trust, if you will, as a metric for your marketing, not just the numbers of, oh, um, did I get enough clicks this month? It's more about like, did I deliver enough trust? Did I get people to trust me a little bit more than last month? And if you consistently do that, people will come to you when they're ready to buy. Trust is not an easy metric to create. It requires a lot of patience and a lot of figuring out internally what that trust means for you. And it's kind of fairly unique to each business because you may see trust in a different way or in a different mode and different metrics to understand it based on what you choose to do for your marketing or for your business. But it's there. It is possible to try and figure out. But at the end of the day, just follow your gut. If you think that this is a good post or this is a good ad or this is a good, because you wrote it and you feel proud about it and you feel like this feels like me, if you will, just go with that because chances are other people are going to see that as well. And I think one of the last things about, remaining economically viable post-algorithmic in a post-algorithmic world is also the idea of being a lot more intentional. And this may not appear as like a big big tip or a big, reveal, but based on everything that we've talked about. But it's really, really true. The idea of just being intentional with what you're choosing to do now is not just, it's very common for social media, right? Whenever you're posting there that it's Friday at 4:59 p.m. and you forgot about it, or you've been busy, right? And you haven't been posting anything this week, and you're like, oh my God, I need to post something. So I'm just gonna do this first thing that comes in my head, and the first thing that comes in my head is usually, hey, why don't you buy something from me, right? Because I don't have the time to actually pay attention to my marketing. And that's one of the big drawbacks that I think a lot of people get, and why people end up not liking marketing in general is because they don't spend enough attention to, and they don't understand enough about marketing to see that this is all just a big relationship building engine. And one of the great things about that is that now it allows you to be a lot more intentional. It's like, okay, so how am I going to build a relationship today? As opposed to how am I going to, sell something today, which most people aren't trying to sell. Most people are trying to make the world better. Like, you came into this business, or you created this business primarily because you could offer a better service, you could offer a better product, or you thought that this would make a big difference in people's lives, or you thought, any number of different reasons why. But primarily it's because you thought that opening this business yourself, as opposed to letting other people do it, you could make a bigger difference, a bigger impact in the world. And that's amazing. And that's awesome. One of the things that I usually also like to tell people is the idea that you should slow down your marketing. Don't try to be everywhere all at once, which is the common thought and the common thing that a lot of people try to get you to do. Because again, attention being the single factor here, that if you get enough attention out there, somebody eventually is going to call you, or somebody eventually is going to come to your store, and then you'll be able to sell them something. And that megaphone of attention is what creates all the noise on the internet, and all the same, because everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing the exact same thing. Everybody's using AI to write their blogs and write their posts, and everybody's doing all these things. And that doing, something different than that is what makes the difference, is what makes that big impact, is what makes you stand out. So I usually tell people not to focus on just being everywhere, right? But being more intentional, less but better. Even if you decide to create less content, but every content piece is something that you like or something that you're proud of, you're going to eventually end up liking your marketing more, because it's more fun to build something that you actually want to build, as opposed to putting just selling posts all the time, as an example. If you like what you do, and if you like the posts, and if you like the advertising, if you like writing blogs, or if you like the things that you are putting out there, chances are you're going to be doing it for a lot longer. And consistency is actually the great marker of trust, because you're able to understand that this person is there for the long term and is constantly doing it, and is constantly you must be an expert at something if you're doing it enough for a long period of time. So that is actually a very great metric of being able to understand and improve your marketing, grow your business. Can you do something consistently? And if you like what you do, it becomes a lot easier. And I think I'm going to leave this with one single idea, if you will, that I heard somebody say. I'm not entirely sure who it was that said it. I can't remember because I didn't write it down. But I heard somebody say this that I really, really enjoy. And essentially, it's something along the lines of, I am terrible at marketing, but I know how to make friends. And that's really all you need to be better at marketing. Do you know how to make friends? Everybody does. That means you can be good at marketing as well. So thank you very much for listening to my podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you follow the podcast on all available channels. I'm pretty sure this is going to be on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all the regular channels for podcasts. So if you like it, I hope you follow on my journey, and see you on the next episode.